If you were alive in 1988, you were told this aircraft did not exist yet. You believed it. There are machines built to move fast. This one was built to not be seen at all. The people who worked on it spent careers under secrecy agreements. Most of them still do not say very much.
For 30 years it crossed oceans no one knew it crossed.
When it first appeared publicly in 1988, grown men stood on the runway at Palmdale and simply could not speak. Now the same aircraft that once silenced crowds is being made safe to take apart.
It still does not look entirely real. Even now.
The machine that flew missions over Iraq, Afghanistan, Serbia, now stopped by yellow rubber wedges. Before a single bolt is turned, the aircraft must be proven harmless. On paper, at least. There is a moment in every retirement where work stops and something else takes over. This is that moment.
30 years of absolute secrecy, ending now, under lights anyone can see.
The Cold War is over. The aircraft it produced is finally catching up.
What? I understand. How?
How? It is control.
A bomber this large carries enough fuel to reach almost any city on Earth. That fuel must leave before anything else does.
It took Northrop engineers years to hide those tanks properly. It takes a pump about 4 hours to empty them.
You never quite get used to the scale. Ask anyone who has worked on one.
The B-2 is 172 feet wide. That is wider than a Boeing 747.
Somewhere in Missouri, a middle-aged Caucasian male pilot who flew this aircraft for 20 years.
For decades, these panels closed in front of sensors designed to detect exactly this kind of shape. Some parts will not go to a museum. They will simply go somewhere else. And that will be the last that is said about them.
Before a single gram of hardware leaves this room, it has a name, a number, and a destination.
The bomber is no longer a weapon. It is an object. That distinction, small as it sounds, changes everything that happens next. Each compartment that opens now is a compartment that spent 30 years ensuring no one would ever see inside it. This is what 30 years of secrecy looks like when it finally comes to an end. Paperwork. Decades of flight leave marks. On a stealth aircraft, they are subtle. Patch zones, wear lines, repairs so invisible you have to know where to look.
The wing alow spans 172 feet. That is wider than many streets.
The first pieces come off gently. They always do.
What once sliced through defended airspace at 50,000 feet now moves at walking pace, guided by hands.
Retirement has its own quiet choreography. It is just performed at a scale that makes the choreographers invisible. Inside, the aircraft feels even larger than the outside suggested it could be.
A machine designed to avoid attention now demands all of it. Everything that moved inside this aircraft did so because of systems no outsider was ever meant to see.
The low observable coating is not paint, it is a layered system of materials developed over years. Even a small sample must be treated as sensitive.
On a program this classified, even the material that protect the aircraft is itself protected.
The smallest piece belongs to something so large it barely fits inside the building containing it. Once empty, the bomber begins to feel strangely mortal. Some of the most advanced engineering of the 20th century comes apart one bolt at a time.
The bomber is now losing the very surface that made it impossible to find. That process is painstaking. It is also irreversible.
This is the view the public was never meant to have. It turns out to be one of the most remarkable sights in modern aviation.
2 people. In all that aircraft. That was always the number. 2 people crossing oceans the rest of us never knew they were crossing.
The scale is the real spectacle. It always has been.
The doors that once opened over defended cities cycle once more for the last time, then stop. The aircraft will not need them again.
The scale is the real spectacle. It always has been. Every small connection belongs to something that makes small things irrelevant. The mission hardware leaves first. What it leaves behind is a hollow, large enough to feel lonely inside.
The clean silhouette gives way to complexity. That complexity is also extraordinary. Now the impossible aircraft starts to look mechanical, and even mechanical, it is overwhelming. The human space inside this aircraft was always the smallest part of it. These arrays could detect threats hundreds of miles away. They leave in padded foam with the same ceremony as any other object being carefully handled. A machine this secret is documented down to the last bracket. The documentation alone fills rooms. The aircraft is now splitting into separate histories. Each one goes somewhere different.
Without its systems, even a legend starts to look ordinary. That may be the saddest thing about dismantling something built to be extraordinary. The nerve center of the most advanced bomber ever built comes apart quietly. Most things this powerful do.
For all its size, and its size is staggering, the bomber held only 2 people. That ratio is one of the most extraordinary things about it. Some parts will be dismantled. Others will be remembered. The decision is made with a chalk mark and a conversation.
Some pieces leave like relics, which, in a sense, is exactly what they are.
Deep in the wing, the real muscle waits. 4 engines, hidden so well that from the outside you would never know where to look. The engines were always hidden. What was never hidden was the scale of the machine built around them.
Age shows differently in places this small, especially when everything around them is this large. The eyes and ears of the aircraft are next.
To remove one engine from a B-2, you first build something that resembles a construction site around it.
Systems that drove one of the most powerful aircraft ever built are drained of the last of their purpose. It takes hours.
This is where the machine starts to feel truly heavy. Not metaphorically, physically. Precision engineering at the microscopic level. Monumental scale all around it. For the first time in its operational life, this engine is fully visible to the open air.
Man and machine share the frame. They do not share the scale. The B-2 weighs 160,000 pounds fully loaded. Even empty, lifting it is an industrial exercise.
The heart comes out slowly. It always does.
One of 4 voices goes silent. The aircraft notices it in a way that is hard to describe.
The bomber is now being translated into decisions. Some of those decisions take only seconds. Some take months. Absence changes an aircraft as much as removal does.
Under the bomber, everything seems oversized, including the landing gear that was itself always oversized.
It takes a dedicated team, a purpose-built stand, and most of a working day just to remove one leg. Mobility is removed system by system. The aircraft has no opinion about it. This is where dismantling becomes strategy. Every cut must honor what the aircraft once was. That is not sentiment. It is procedure.
Some pieces resist coming free. 30 years of load cycles and temperature change weld composite to composite in ways that are not on any drawing.
Once airborne over 3 continents, now held still by workshop steel. Even the pins that held it together are built at a scale that takes you by surprise.
The machine is only becoming manageable by becoming smaller. Even then, manageable is relative.
The aircraft slowly gives up the parts that once touched the earth. The aircraft no longer even pretends it could fly. That is a small, significant crossing.
Control leaves the flying wing next.
Strength, motion, control, overcame. Laid out in silence on a concrete floor. Under stealth and speed was always structure. Enormous, patient, invisible structure. When one section leaves, the aircraft seems to exhale.
The myth is giving way to anatomy. Both are impressive.
At this point, it looks less like a weapon than a city under construction. A very quiet city.
The first irreversible cuts are always the heaviest. Once detached, even major structure becomes cargo.
Certain parts feel less like hardware and more like identity. The canopy is one of them. The face of the aircraft leaves before the body does.
Some pieces are history. Some are only material. The distinction is made by a male East Asian person with a clipboard.
Emptiness changes the aircraft faster than the eye expects. The question is no longer only how to dismantle it. It is what to save.
Preservation can look almost as industrial as destruction. The difference is where the material ends up.
In retirement, memory and machinery share the same floor. They always have. Most people just never get to see it.
Preservation can look almost as industrial as destruction. The difference is where the material ends up.
In retirement, memory and machinery share the same floor. They always have. Most people just never get to see it. The bomber is now divided into what will remain and what will go.
Even dismantling makes room for remembrance.
To dismantle a giant, you need other giants.
Legacy survives in fragments. The fragments, in this case, are not small.
The gentle phase is ending.
The cut is made, but gravity still has the final say. Now the mood changes. Dismantling changes scale into emptiness. To the yard, even history eventually becomes inventory. Others are already being prepared for memory. They will spend the next 50 years being looked at rather than flown.
Some parts leave quietly and never come back. The containers they leave in are designed specifically to prevent questions.
This is not destruction by chaos. It is destruction by discipline.
Not everything went to fire.
Once airborne over 3 oceans, now airborne by crane.
The bigger the piece, the more patience it demands. This one demands a great deal.
Some parts are saved because they mean more than their materials. This is one of the few times aviation people say that out loud.
Precision gave way to force the moment the shear blades closed.
The machine that once avoided detection now announces itself with noise.
The shape America spent 30 years learning to recognize is being broken on purpose.
The aircraft has left the hangar, but not the spectacle of scale.
Once the secrecy leaves, metallurgy takes over.
After all the secrecy, it ends in the oldest industrial language there is, Reont, fire.
Once a flying wing, now only liquid promise.
In pieces, it becomes almost unrecognizable. Almost. The shape is gone. The mass remains. The next chapter belongs to material, not aviation. In another age, in another context, it would have looked like rebirth.
The bomber is now behaving like feedstock.
Here, everything becomes secondary to the heat.
In the end, materials matter more than mystique. Once reduced, the material can finally move on.
The bomber has lost its singular identity. What replaced it is abundance.
It is less dramatic than a crash, and somehow more final. Strength still matters out here. It just does not matter enough.
And with each section, the legend becomes material.
The bomber now exists in categories instead of one shape. The categories take up almost as much room.
The last recognizable fragments vanish into heat.
Even a stealth bomber ends the way many giants do, under heavier machinery.
No stealth, no shape, no history, just material. The bomber becomes anonymous at last. It took 30 years and a furnace the size of a building.
This is the first moment the aircraft is truly dismantled. Everything before was removal. This is something else.
Scale still belongs to the machine, even in pieces.